Hello, and welcome to the Questions and Answers edition of the Thriving Kids podcast at the Child Mind Institute, with me, your host, Dr. Dave Anderson. We got some really thoughtful questions after last week's episode with Dr. Jenny Louie, where we talked about how to help kids build healthy self-esteem. If you haven't heard that one yet, it's available now in the Thriving Kids podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. So today, we're going to dig into them and look at challenges that come up when kids doubt themselves. From self-esteem to fear of failure to comparing themselves to everyone around them. We'll talk about how to help kids feel confident in who they are, even when things don't go perfectly. Let's get into it. So the first question that we got was, how can I build my child's self-esteem without making them feel entitled or overconfident? And this is a great question that we get frequently from parents, because parents are worried that if you give kids too much praise or tell them they've achieved too much or focus too much on winning, that kids will get to the point where they think they should win at everything, or they'll start thinking they're the greatest soccer player in the world, and they'll feel kind of too overconfident. So what we want to think about is this, and we talk about it a bit with Dr. Louie on the podcast, is that you want to focus on process over product. So when kids are building their self-esteem, whether it's in sports or music or drawing or art or at school with academics or with friends or with their family members or developing any particular skill or hobby, focus on how much they're trying, how much they're putting themselves into it, their thought process, the effort they're putting through, how you saw them go back and persist, whatever that might be. Don't focus on the idea of being the best or the, only one who was chosen for certain things or the coach's favorite or the teacher's favorite. Just focus on kind of steady personal improvement in the sense that they're where they are and then you're watching them improve. My 6-year-old daughter is not necessarily the best gymnast on the floor in her gymnastics class, but what we notice each week is that she's really trying to learn how to do a walking handstand, or she's trying to jump up and down on the balance beam. And even then, what we're looking to do is see that she feels pride in how much she's trying, how much she's challenging herself. Now, the next question we got was, what do I do when my child is consistently hard on themselves, like calling themselves stupid or saying they're not good at anything or saying they hate themselves or something like that, or I'm no good? With a question like this, it's really important to think about a kid's self-talk. So we as psychologists will think what's that internal monologue? And it's maybe they do well on a math test and they think, I was lucky. And then maybe they do badly on a math test and they think, I'm stupid, I'm bad at math, I'm always going to be bad at math. We call that depressogenic thinking. And the reason why we call that depressogenic thinking is because when you think a personal label about yourself and you think that it's kind of permanent and that it's not really situational, it's a state of being for you, that can predict kids who are much harder on themselves or might be more prone to depression or anxiety later on. So we really focus with a kid on restructuring that. We'll say, wait a second, you got a bad grade on the math test. It doesn't mean you're stupid or you're bad at math. Maybe what this means is you forgot to study Unit 3, and you might want to just think about that next time, or you didn't get a good night's sleep beforehand, or you kind of got distracted by the fact that your friend, Jessica was drumming on the table the entire time during the math test. Either way, we want to help them focus on situational factors in the moment, focus back on the idea that they're trying or they're developing a particular skill, or to be gentle with themselves, and focus on kind of how they can problem solve or address situational variables. And that way we can get them to start talking to themselves a little bit more encouraging way. It's not like they're on the soccer field and they've missed a goal and they say, I'm terrible and coach hates me and wishes I wasn't on the team. Instead, it's, most Major League Soccer players, whether it's Trinity Rodman or my fave from back in the day, Kobe Jones or Alexi Lalas, miss the goal on most of their shots. So I just need to keep trying and know that at some point I'm going to strike it well and it's going to go in as long as I keep practicing. That's the kind of self-talk we want for kids. The next question is, how do I support my child when they keep comparing themselves to others, especially on social media? So this is a particular question where we want to make sure that parents are thinking about these comparison effects, particularly that happen online, and helping kids to be critical thinkers about them. So a lot of the issues that we see, well, I shouldn't say a lot of the issues, but one of the issues, one of the particular risks that we see with social media is that comparison effect and how it might affect teens in particular, where they notice the pictures that people are posing of these awesome moments in their lives, or they notice the pictures that people are posting where they look really attractive and have used filters or have particularly dressed themselves up or whatever it might be, and they say, why don't I look that good, or why isn't my life that fun? And what we want to help teens to realize is the need for critical thinking about what you consume on the internet. Everything on the internet has an angle. You are the product. So it's meant to keep your eyeballs for as long as possible, or it's meant to tout something so that you can get attention or likes or something else. People's lives aren't that beautiful. Everybody experiences pain, sadness, and ups and downs. People don't always look pretty. Like, that's an absolute rule. And so what we need to remember is, as much as you're comparing yourself socially, your job is to have the fun in your life. Your job is to, focus on having pride in your body in whatever way makes you feel good. And then if social media is really affecting you that negatively, let's think critically about whether or not you need it, or whether or not we shouldn't think about really regulating our exposure to it, since it's causing such a kind of self-judgmental effect. So our next question: my child won't try anything new because they're afraid of failing. How can I help them feel more confident taking risks? This is another one that we reference a bit on the podcast episode, where our focus is, with parents, we'll say, what is the positive opposite of what your child is, showing, which is like maybe they're afraid to take risks, maybe they have real difficulty being brave in new situations. And we'll say, okay, the positive opposite is being brave in those new situations, or taking safe risks, or, doing something independently. And then we'll say to parents is, let's think about all the different levels of how you foster that kind of behavior, where first, you might at some point give your kid an awkward speech where you say, you know what, I was just thinking the other day, and let me be awkward for a second, but I'm so proud of you for just trying to be independent or trying to be brave in X and Y ways. Then the next stage is you try to catch them being good. Even when they're brave on things they might not otherwise consider challenging, or they're independent on things that might not be that challenging, we just kind of say, like, I wanted you to know I saw that you packed your bag for camp tomorrow and I'm really impressed. Or I noticed that you really started your homework by yourself and that was showing me that you can, do that independently. Or I saw there was a group of kids and you walked right up to them at the school picnic and just started talking, and I was so proud of you for being brave. Catch them being good, and that starts to become internalized as their self-talk. And then lastly, problem solve with them. Hey, I know that was a tough birthday party for us to attend. I know it was tough to go to that particular gathering, of teens and just kind of walk in not knowing anybody. How can I help make you feel more comfortable next time? How can I help you be more brave in going into that? What can I do to support you? Because at the end of the day, we want to help our kids and teens engage with life, and we want them to know that that's our objective, and that we're also here for both their successes and problem solving around the moments that are challenging. The next question we got is, what do I do if my child overhears a friend saying something unkind about them? How can I help them process it and not let it define how they see themselves? So this particular question, happens daily, weekly, monthly, heck, throughout childhood and adult life. We know that people are going to say unkind things about us. Part of this is trying to kind of help a kid to draw their sphere around them and to say, here are the people that I really care about, my closest friends, my closest family members, my partner, my girlfriend, my boyfriend, these folks, my teachers that I really like. These are the people who, I might be building relationships with, and where maybe if they say something unkind, we might be working through that, or I might bring it up to them and ask them why they said that particular thing. And then there's another circle of folks where if they say something unkind, our job is just let that go. We don't want kids to get over-focused on making sure everybody likes them. We don't want kids to, be over-focused on the idea of like being the perfect person to everybody. And if somebody says something unkind who isn't a close friend or a family member, we do want kids to pay attention to it, because maybe there is a moment of learning about yourself or reflecting on something you could do better or to be nicer to other people. But if we see kids who are kind of over-focused on it, where they're just like, oh, my friend said one thing, and this kind of stays with kids. Like, I still remember there was a kid in middle school who said to me right after I got contacts that I looked like I was squinting. And for some reason that ruined my transition from glasses to contacts, because I just thought for like a year, oh my God, everybody can see me like squinting in some kind of odd way because I put in these contacts, and everybody's thinking this all the time. And so a focus for us is kind of helping a kid to let go of that, realizing that other people might have said that just kind of offhandedly, they didn't mean it that meanly, or if they did mean it in kind of a mean way, how much do we want to put stock in their feedback? There's so many different possibilities for how we can help kids to see how they can either reflect on something as constructive feedback, or figure out how they can let it go and not over-focus on people liking them. The next question we have is, how can I tell if my child has low self-esteem or if they're just going through a rough patch? So that's a really important question that we get from parents that also relates to kind of concerns about kids who might be feeling a little bit depressed or feeling a little bit sad. So I'll kind of talk about that differentiation. It's that self-esteem is multifaceted. So what we want is for kids to think about all kinds of different things in life that could be anchors for their self-esteem, all kinds of skills and hobbies that they could be focused on, all kinds of personal characteristics, being kind, being funny, being caring for others, things like that, that represent how they interact with other people. We want them to think about, different ways that their family values that they are living or expressing, how they connect with their community or their faith background, any number of things that they can feel are anchors of their identity, and then ways that they express themselves in the world. So self-esteem has lots of different facets. If we see a kid who's consistently speaking negatively about themselves or talking about how they're terrible at different things, and we notice that it's kind of global in the sense it's across settings, they're talking about it in a really negative way across school, across friends, across family, things like that, these are kind of the moments to be concerned. And the reason for this is that we expect that kids might have moments where they're hard on themselves or moments where they don't feel too good about themselves. And those are moments where we might feel like it's a little bit more flexible, where we can kind of get in there with them and say, hey, I know soccer's hard right now, but let's think about these other ways that you're a kind and nice person, or that you've got great friends that you're interacting with, or you're really good at drawing, or other kind of anchors their self-esteem. And the kid can kind of be lifted up a little bit and say, like, you're right, there's lots of different ways. But if we see that more global kind of gloom that comes over a kid where they're sad or down about themselves a lot, it cuts across a lot of contexts. Maybe it means that they're not finding as much joy in things that they used to think were really fun, or maybe they seem to be saying things that are very kind of hopeless about the future. Those are the moments where we might be a little bit more concerned and say, like, that low self-esteem or those negative feelings about yourself might be something that could require some help from a school counselor or a leader in your community or a mentor or a therapist who can kind of help them alongside you to get through that patch. And maybe, there might even need to be a reason why they seek some therapy to help them to rediscover the ways that they're engaging with the world, thinking about themselves, and fighting back against that kind of bully in their brain that might be saying you're not, worth it, or you don't have things that you're good at. So another question we got is, what if my child only seems confident in one area, like sports or school, but not in other parts of life? Should I be worried? We see this a lot where kids have a narrow kind of way of being in the world, where they're focused on like one thing. Like they're saying, like, I focus on soccer, that's what I do, or I do math. And parents will get a little bit concerned because their child's self-esteem seems to be anchored to that one thing, and their fortunes, fall and rise with how they're doing in that particular thing. And we agree. We want kids' self-esteem to be diversified across a number of different things about who they are as a person, their identity, their family background, their talents, their hobbies, all kinds of things. So I wouldn't necessarily say that a kid who's really invested in one hobby or one academic subject is a cause for worry. I would just say it's a cause for us to think about broadening their horizons and saying, I promise you I'll take you to travel soccer games, or I'll let you join the math team at school, but I also want you to think about one other thing at the same time that you might be investing in. Maybe it's seeing friends outside school in a way that isn't associated with that activity, or maybe it's investing in another subject or taking up another hobby, any number of things. We just say to kids, my job as a parent is to support you in your passions and also broaden your horizons. Let's figure out how we can do both. The next question is, how can I help my child feel proud of themselves without focusing too much on achievements or praise? What this relates to is, we'll see kids who come off the soccer field and say, we won, we beat that team 6-4, and that's what they care about. Or a kid who comes off and says, I should have gotten the prize on my piano recital for being the best student, for my teacher. Or we'll see a kid come off and say, I should have gotten the highest grade on that math test. I did better than my friend. I got a point off because the teacher was being kind of focused too narrowly, and, I should have gotten the best thing. And we hear that a lot from kids because, look, some kids are competitive, some kids are really focused on achievements, and what we want to think about is honoring the fact the child feels good while also pivoting their perspective to how hard they tried or other aspects that were valuable about the experience. So the kid who comes off the soccer field, we say, you know what, you're right. It's good that you guys, won because that was a good game that you all played. I really liked how you guys worked together as a team. Or I was really proud of you for some of those ways that you got your teammates involved as you guys were playing, because I think you play stronger when you play together as a team. Or some kid comes off and says, I should have gotten the award at the piano recital. And we say, listen, what I'm really impressed with is how much you practiced day in and day out in the 2 weeks leading up to the recital to make sure that you had that piece down. That was really impressive. Or the kid says, I should have gotten the highest grade on the math test, and we say, I'm just so proud that you seem to really be investing in math this whole year, and your teacher did say on your report card that they see that effort that you're putting forth. And all we're doing is offering them, yes, we're proud of you, and here's some other information that you can also anchor your self-esteem around that isn't about just the achievements or the feedback from others. The next question that we got is, my child is a perfectionist and gets really upset when things aren't perfect. Is that a self-esteem issue? So I wouldn't say that perfectionism and self-esteem are exactly overlapping. I'm not sure that I even see the Venn diagram as fully overlapping. There are some people who do anchor their self-esteem in the idea that they do things perfectly or they do things extremely well. But what I would say is that perfectionism is often something that we want to distance a bit from self-esteem, because it could be something that causes a lot of anxiety or a lot of distress for somebody if that's what they're focused on. So a lot of times with a patient, what I might do is say, like, I get it that you want to get hundreds on all your tests. I get it that you want your coach to say that you were the player of the game. But at the same time, let's focus on some of the other aspects of this experience. Let's also focus on failing a little bit and seeing what happens. Maybe making a wrong pass or playing a wrong note or, getting a question wrong in class when you raise your hand, and just see how that feels. And a kid might say, you're crazy. Like, I wouldn't do that. I get things right. I do things perfectly. And we say, I really want to show you how I think it could be healthy for you to focus less on doing it perfectly and more on just the joy that you get from doing it, or the way that, you really invest in this particular experience. And we can do little experiments that show that, like, not being perfect still allows you to have the same level of joy or investment, or still has, the people that you care about, your coaches, mentors, teachers, telling you that they're really impressed with your performance, even though we don't want you to be too dependent on others' feedback in that way for your self-esteem. The last question we got is, what role does how I talk about myself play in my child's self-esteem? How can I model healthy self-worth? And I'm so glad that a parent or caregiver sent us this question. So it's really important for kids to see all manner of things that you want them to take on, modeled by parents and caregivers. So what that means is, again, as I've referenced in this episode, if self-esteem is this multifaceted thing that are based around family values, community values, interpersonal characteristics, things that you do, you being kind or caring or compassionate or driven or, anything like that, as well as hobbies, skills, academics, those kinds of things. Really try to narrate explicitly for your kid how you invest in those things, how you invest in your personal characteristics, your personal growth, how you invest in your hobbies or skills or work or academics, and what you think about as the kind of ways that you anchor yourself in the effort or the persistence or the ways you're developing yourself around those. And that kind of leads to healthy self-worth, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to convey to a kid is that we want you to have pride in who you are. We want you to have pride in what you do and the effort you put forth. And we want you to have pride in the values that we have as a family. And the more that we can let you know what those are and then catch you being good when you, demonstrate them or tell us about how you're working on them, the better. So thanks for joining me for another Q&A edition of our Thriving Kids podcast from the Child Mind Institute. If you have a question you'd like me to answer in a future episode, you can send it my way at childmind.org/podcast. And don't forget to check out the show notes for links to our favorite resources on self-esteem and how to support kids who are being a little bit too hard on themselves. See you next time.